Most often the reasons were the basest, rewarding the servant and humiliating the woman, but the opposite was also true. Since Old Testament times, a woman's desires have not been taken into account. She could be given as a reward to the mob or to vassals, or even as a payoff from enemies. For example, the Bible describes the case of a wealthy Levite Jew who paid off his rapists on the road by offering a concubine as a substitute. In the morning, he finds the breathless woman on the porch and coldly uses her to incite war, chopping the body into 12 pieces and sending it to the 12 tribes of Israel as evidence of the cruelty of his enemies and as a cry for revenge at the same time. This case shows the value of a woman in those days. In fact, even much later, the price of a concubine was not particularly high. For example, in Eastern Muslim countries it was a common custom to sell unattended wives from the harem to the ruler's inner circle or to the ruler's warriors. Sensitive Nisa. But the Greek Herodotus, in his work History, told a cautionary tale of how one should not act with a woman even for the sake of one's sexual fantasies. King Kendals of Lydia was so admired by the beauty of his wife Nissa that he decided to add oil to the fire of intimacy by making his servant Jagus watch the queen undress in front of her husband in the bedroom. But the sensitive Nisa heard Jagus panting behind the curtains. Apparently she had no intention of indulging the king's sexual fantasies, knowing that they might go too far. The next day, she caught Jagus peeping and demanded that he kill her husband, threatening him with publicity and a humiliating execution. Blinded by her beauty, Jagus killed Candavel at night in the matrimonial bed. After the king's death, he declared himself ruler of Lydia and married the widow, founding the Myrmidad dynasty. His right to power was confirmed by the Delphic oracle. Jagus ruled over Lydia for 38 years. Covering sins. Ruler Nero divorced his beloved Poppaea from her husband, the horseman Rufius Crispius, and gave her in marriage to his supporter Silvius Otto. He was so in love with the woman that he once banged on her door, but she would not open it, saying that she had a legitimate husband and was quite happy with him. Meanwhile, Otto had to sleep with his wife, hiding it from Nero. The irrepressible Poppaea dreamed of becoming empress. She insisted that Nero kill his own mother Agrippina, with whom he was cohabiting. After killing his mother, Nero divorced his wife Octavia, sent Otto away from Rome, and married Poppaea. The affair, however, ended in tragedy. In a fit of temper, the drunken emperor kicked his pregnant wife in the stomach and she died on the same day. It is good that he did not kill her. In Russia, the feelings of concubines were not taken into account. A woman who entered the harem of a prince could not always count on his attention. She could be given for the use of a friend of the prince, a combatant, or even a serf. Prince Vladimir, for example, is attributed a harem of 300 concubines. Everyone knows the story of how he ruined Polotsk because of the Polotsk princess Ragnita, who refused to marry him. Taking the city, he raped her in front of her parents, and then killed them in front of his daughter. But at least Ragnita became his wife. But the daughter of the ruler of Korsun was less fortunate. After capturing the city, Vladimir repeated his feat. He tied the governor and his wife to the pillars in front of his tent, took their daughter to his tent and indulged her for 3 nights, then gave her to his boyar Varangian Jedburn. Married to a pervert. But if the Russian Prince Barbarian was cruel to the daughters of defeated rulers, the enlightened German Emperor Henry IV did to his Russian wife much more cruelly. Princess Eupraxia, daughter of the Prince of all Russia, Vsevolod, granddaughter of Yaroslav the Wise, at the age of 12 years was given in marriage to the Saxon Margrave Henry Staden. A year later the girl, who in Catholicism was called Adalgisa, was widowed and soon became the wife of the German Emperor Henry IV. The husband was of a bestial temperament. He was accused of witchcraft and Satanism. He was a member of the sect of the Nicolaitans, who practiced orgies and celebrated the Black Massachusetts. The Pope excommunicated him from the church, and the hypocritical monarch came barefoot to Rome and begged forgiveness. Soon Eupraxia Adalgisa found out the price of a pound for a pound. Henry was insane with jealousy, constantly trying to catch his wife with a lover, reproached her childless. The only son of Eupraxia died as a baby. In the end, the emperor incited one of the barons to arrange a date with his wife and decided to ambush her by accusing her of adultery. Eupraxia, of course, did not come to see the baron, and Henry was beaten in the dark by servants who mistook him for a thief. The emperor was furious. He had the baron executed and his wife stripped naked and thrown into the cellar, where he ordered her to be raped by servants, courtiers, and even simple soldiers. He went so far as to demand that his own son Conrad, by his first marriage, rape his young stepmother, and when he refused, he disowned him. Conrad preferred to go away from his father, who was insane. How many years of torture Eupraxia lasted in the dungeons, it is difficult to calculate. She was given in marriage in Europe in 1086, but only in 1094 she was able, with the help of the Margravine, to escape her husband. She fled to the emperor's archenemy, Pope Urbanus II, to whom she told of all the atrocities going on at the Germanic court. The Pope had no choice but to sympathize with the poor girl. He forgave the sins of Eupraxia, divorced her from the emperor, and anathematized him. By this time, Henry had already been excommunicated from the Catholic Church 3 times, and now he was considered damned. All his sons had turned away from him. Eupraxia had no choice but to return to Kiev. There she converted to Orthodoxy again, waited for her ex-husband to die, and went to the convent of St. Andrew. After such a lesson, Russian princes tried not to give their daughters in marriage in Europe. Wife from the bed of a servant. It also happened that the Tsars took their wives from the beds of their retainers. This happened to Peter the Great. The widow of a Swedish dragoon, Martha of Stavronskaya, was given to Field Marshal Sheremetev after the capture of Marienburg Fortress as a trophy. She quickly bored him and passed into new hands, becoming the mistress of Prince Menshikov. The beautiful, puffy woman was noticed by the emperor and ordered her to bring a candle to his bedroom. In the morning, Peter paid the woman sparingly, gave her 1 ducat. After the night, Martha returned to Menshikov's bed. Exactly 9 months after her night with Peter, she gave birth to a son and named him Peter. The emperor took the hint. He did not look at the fact that the boy immediately died, and made Martha his constant mistress, insisted on her conversion to Orthodoxy, changing her name to Catherine Michailova, and then married. The happiness of the spouses did not last long. Peter suspected his wife of treason. He cut off the head of his supposed lover Willem Mons and gave it as a gift to his wife. The spouses only reconciled on Peter's deathbed, but the Tsar's other mistress, Maria Matveeva, was less fortunate. The emperor was jealous of her, and in the end severely beat her, and in anger he gave her in marriage to his courtier, the Major General Alexander Rumiantsev. It was not, however, the worst fate. In the boudoir of empresses, women rulers of ancient times were more possessive and preferred to kill lovers. For example, the murder of men after a night of love was attributed to the Egyptian Queen Cleopatra and the Georgian Queen Tamara. Russian empresses, on the other hand, were generous with lovers. Peter the Great's daughter Elizabeth Petrovna, who inherited her father's temperament, chose her lovers without regard to rank. In her bed visited the Grenadier Semenovsky Regiment Shubin, Cossack and church choir singer Alexei Razumovsky, chamber boy Pimen Lyalin, and other young, tall, handsome men. All of them became richer after the Empress's boudoir. But Catherine too sent men to the beds of her entourage even before they became her favorites to evaluate male strength and the magnitude of their dignity. Indeed, why would the Russian autocrat waste time with unsuitable candidates? First, a handsome man whom the Empress had her eye on had to show his bravery in the bed of maid of honor Anna Protosova, and only after her approval was the future lover was allowed into the monarch's bedroom. It is curious that Protosova was considered ugly at court and was compared to a Moor. But the Empress specially chose such a maid of honor because Catherine was not afraid that her future favorite would fall in love with Protosova. It was said that Catherine's future lover was often tested by her personal maid and confidant, the illiterate Chamberlain Maria Perekukina. Curiously, among the Empress's love toys was a special throne with a phallus embedded in it. The product was set in motion by pedals behind the back of the throne. Who exactly pressed these pedals and whether the Empress used it is a secret that only her servants know about. As she grew older, Catherine too could not take comfort in the fact that her young lovers were falling in love with her maid of honor. Of course, maid of honor were ladies of nobility, but at court they were considered voluntary slaves and were obliged to obey sovereigns. After learning that the 28-year-old favorite of Dmitry Mamonov, pregnant maid of honor Sherbakov, Catherine decided to revenge, marry him to the daughter of James Bryce, and only a plea from the favorite saved him from such a fate. Catherine allowed him to marry whom he wants and sent out of sight. What would you like to see next video on our channel? Tell us in the comments.